My name is Vanessa, and for the past 8 years, I believed I had a good marriage. I was never the kind of woman to ignore red flags or turn a blind eye to the truth. But with Derek, I never thought I had to. We had built a life together, one filled with love, shared goals, and dreams of a future that seemed solid. I had a thriving career, a home that felt safe, and a husband I adored. We weren't perfect, but I thought we were happy. I trusted him completely. Until the night I found out I was living in a lie. Looking back, I see the signs I ignored, the late nights at work, the sudden business trips, the way he had started to distance himself from me, without any clear reason. But at the time, I refused to believe that the man I loved, the man I had built my life around, could betray me. Derek's birthday was coming up, and I wanted to make it special. It wasn't just about the dinner. I wanted to remind him of us, of what we had built together. I took the entire afternoon to prepare, cooking his favorite meal, setting up candles, arranging everything just the way he liked it. I imagined his face lighting up when he walked through the door, the way he would pull me into a hug and tell me how much he loved me. But as the clock ticked past 7 p.m., my excitement started turning into unease. Derek was always home by now. Even when he worked late, he would at least call. I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls. I sent him a quick text. "Hey love, dinner's ready. Can't wait to celebrate with you." No response. I tried to shake off the feeling creeping up my spine. He was probably just caught up in something important at work. But then, without even thinking, I opened our location sharing app, something we had set up years ago for emergencies, never something I had felt the need to check before. My breath caught in my throat. He wasn't at work. His location was pinging from a luxury hotel downtown. A chill ran through me. My mind immediately scrambled for explanations. A business meeting? A surprise for me? Something work-related? But deep down, I already knew. There was no reason for him to be there. Not on his birthday, not when I had been waiting for him at home. I tried to call him. It rang twice before he picked up. "Hey, babe," he answered, sounding distracted. "Hey, are you on your way home?" I kept my voice light, normal, like I wasn't staring at a screen that told me he was somewhere he shouldn't be. There was a slight pause, then a sigh. Ugh, not yet. Work is insane today. I'm buried in reports, and it's looking like I'll be here late. My fingers tightened around my phone. He was lying. I could hear voices in the background, soft laughter, the clinking of glasses. He wasn't at his office. He was out, with someone else. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced out a smile. "Oh no, that's awful. Well, don't stress too much. We can celebrate whenever you get home." "Yeah, I'll try not to be too late," he said, his voice casual, too casual. The call ended, and I just stood there in my kitchen, staring at the beautifully arranged table, the candles flickering softly, the meal growing cold. My chest tightened, my pulse hammering in my ears. I had a choice. I could sit here, waiting, pretending I believed him. Or I could go see the truth for myself. Before I even had time to process my emotions, my feet were already moving. I grabbed my keys, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. As I drove downtown, every memory of our relationship flashed before my eyes. Our wedding day, the way he used to look at me, the late-night talks, the whispered, "I love yous." Had it all been a lie? When I arrived at the hotel, I sat in the car for a moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. I had to be sure. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. But as I walked into the lobby, I spotted him immediately. Derek, sitting at a small, intimate table. And he wasn't alone. I felt the air rush from my lungs. Across from him sat Natalie, his coworker, the one he had introduced me to at a company event months ago. She was smiling, laughing at something he said, her hand resting lightly on his. My whole body went cold. I could barely hear the blood rushing in my ears. Then, I did something I knew I could never take back. I pulled out my phone and called him. From across the room, I saw his phone light up on the table. I held my breath, praying he would pick up, but instead I watched as he glanced at my name on the screen, hesitated, and silenced it. Then he smiled at her and leaned in closer. In that moment, my world shattered. I stood there, frozen in place, watching as Derek silenced my call and turned his attention back to Natalie. The way he looked at her, leaning in slightly, that soft, easy smile on his face, it was a look I had once thought was reserved only for me. My hands trembled as I tightened my grip on my phone. My first instinct was to march over, slam my wedding ring on the table, and demand an explanation in front of everyone. But I didn't. Something inside me whispered, "Not yet." I forced myself to step back into the shadows, my heart pounding so violently it hurt. I couldn't confront him now. Not when he could spin a web of lies. Not when I didn't have the full truth. If he had the audacity to silence my call and continue his evening like I didn't exist, then this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was deliberate. This was a betrayal he had settled into comfortably. I turned on my phone's camera, hands shaking, and snapped a few photos through the restaurant's glass window. Proof. That's what I needed. My mind was still reeling, my emotions screaming at me to do something, but I knew I had to be smart about this. If Derek could lie so easily, then I needed to be ahead of him. I walked back to my car in a daze. The drive home felt like a blur, my grip on the steering wheel tightening with every passing thought. How long had this been going on? Was I just blind to it? My stomach twisted at the memories, the last-minute business trips, the sudden work dinners, the way he had been distant lately. Had I really missed all the signs? As soon as I stepped into the house, I felt the weight of what had just happened crash down on me. The dinner I had spent hours preparing sat cold on the table, the candles still flickering as if mocking me. I pulled out my phone again, staring at the pictures of Derek and Natalie laughing over their fancy dinner, completely unaware that their little secret was no longer hidden. I needed to talk to someone. Someone who wouldn't just tell me what I wanted to hear, but what I needed to hear. I called Lena, my best friend, the one person I could trust with this. She picked up after the second ring. "Hey V, what's up?" The moment I heard her voice, the dam broke. I didn't even realize I was crying until I choked out, "Derek is cheating on me." There was a long silence, then a sharp intake of breath. "What? Vanessa, are you sure?" "I saw him, Lena. I saw him with her, at a restaurant. He lied to me, told me he was working late, and then ignored my call while he sat there with her, like I didn't even exist." My voice broke on the last words, and I clenched my jaw, trying to keep myself together. Lena swore under her breath. "That son of a... Listen, you need to breathe. I know this is crushing, but don't do anything reckless. You need proof, real proof, before you confront him." "I already have pictures," I whispered. "Good. But what if this has been going on longer than you think? What if there's more?" That thought sent another wave of nausea through me. What if this wasn't just a few dates? What if it had been months, years? "You need a private investigator," Lena said firmly. "If he's been lying to you this easily, you have to know the full truth before you decide your next move." I wiped my tears, something inside me shifting. No more crying, no more waiting. "Okay," I said. "Let's find one." That night, as I sat in bed waiting for Derek to come home, I felt like I was living in a stranger's house. The man I loved, the man I had built my life around, was out there leading a life I had no part in. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the cold emptiness in the space beside me. At midnight, the front door finally clicked open. Derek walked in, sighing dramatically as he set his bag down. He ran a hand through his hair and muttered, "God, what a day! I'm exhausted." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched him from the darkness of our bedroom. You wouldn't believe how crazy work was, he continued, walking toward the bathroom. I barely had time to eat. Lies. More lies. I clenched my fists beneath the blankets, my nails digging into my palms. Vanessa, he called out, are you awake? I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to remain steady. Yeah, I waited up for you. He sighed again, a tired chuckle escaping. You didn't have to do that, babe. I did, but not for the reason you think. As he climbed into bed beside me, pressing a quick kiss to my forehead, I lay still, pretending everything was fine. But my mind was already made up. I was going to get the truth, and when I did, Derek would never see it coming. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Derek's alarm buzzing. I kept my eyes shut, listening as he groaned and stretched, moving about the room like nothing had changed. Like he hadn't lied to my face last night. Like he hadn't spent the evening with another woman while I sat at home, waiting for him like a fool. I felt the bed shift as he leaned over and kissed my cheek. Morning, babe. His voice was groggy but warm, the same way it had been for the past 8 years. I forced a small smile, playing my part. Morning. He showered, got dressed, and kissed me goodbye, mumbling something about a long day ahead. I wondered if that was another lie. Probably. As soon as the door clicked shut behind him, I exhaled, my stomach churning with nerves. Today was the day. Today I was going to get real answers. I grabbed my phone and checked the number Lena had sent me for the private investigator. James Carter. Highly recommended, discreet, and efficient. I called him, my fingers gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Mrs. Reynolds? A calm, professional voice answered. Just Vanessa, I corrected. I need your help. I met him at a small coffee shop later that afternoon, far away from anywhere Derek or his colleagues might be. James was exactly what I expected. Sharp, no nonsense, and direct. He asked me for details, listening intently as I laid out everything. The suspicious business trips, the work dinners, the cold distance that had crept into our marriage. And then, finally, last night. He lied to me, I said, my voice tight. He was with her at the hotel. I need to know how long this has been going on. I need proof. James nodded, his expression unreadable. I'll find out everything for you. But I need you to prepare yourself, Vanessa. This might be bigger than you think. Bigger than I think. The words echoed in my mind. I wasn't sure I could handle anything bigger. But I nodded anyway. Do whatever you need to do. The waiting game. The next few days were excruciating. Every moment with Derek felt like I was suffocating under the weight of what I knew. I watched him carefully, noting the way he casually checked his phone at dinner, the late-night texts he tried to hide, the way he smelled like a different cologne when he came home. I kept my expression neutral, never letting on that I knew anything. Then, on Friday night, I got a text from James. James Carter. We need to meet. I have what you're looking for. My hands shook as I texted back, setting up a meeting for the next morning. That night, Derek came home late again. He walked in, sighing like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. Long day? I asked, watching him carefully. He ran a hand through his hair. You have no idea. Just endless meetings. I almost laughed. Endless meetings. Sure. I nodded, pretending to sympathize. That sounds exhausting. I wondered if he could hear the venom in my voice, if he could sense that something was shifting. The confirmation. The next morning, I met James again, my heart pounding as I slid into the booth. He placed a folder in front of me. It's worse than you thought, he said grimly. I hesitated before opening it. Inside were photos. Derek and Natalie meeting up at different places. Hotels, restaurants, even in his car, their hands lingering too long. A paper trail of hotel reservations, messages, receipts. A timeline of their betrayal laid out in black and white. I swallowed hard, flipping through the evidence, Then I stopped. Wait, I said, my breath catching in my throat. I pointed at one of the documents. It was a hotel receipt. It wasn't just from months ago. It was from years ago. My stomach dropped. This didn't just start recently, I whispered. This has been going on for years? James nodded solemnly. Yes, I'm sorry, Vanessa. Everything inside me shattered. The man I loved, the man I thought I knew, had been lying to me for years. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. The sadness threatened to consume me, but then something else sparked inside me. Rage. This wasn't just a betrayal. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a calculated deception, and I had been played for a fool. James studied my face. What do you want to do next? I exhaled, closing the folder. I'm going to destroy him. I drove home, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The folder full of evidence sat in the passenger seat, taunting me, reminding me that the last 8 years of my life had been built on nothing but lies. My mind replayed every late night, every business trip, every excuse Derek had ever given me. All of it had been a cover for his betrayal. And the worst part? He hadn't just done this once. This had been going on for years. Years of him looking me in the eyes and lying without hesitation. By the time I reached home, my heartbeat was a steady drum of fury in my ears. Derek wasn't home yet. Of course he wasn't. It was Friday night. His usual excuse was late meetings, but now I knew better. I had proof. I walked inside, took a deep breath, and set everything up. I laid the folder on the dining table, open to the most damning photos. I poured myself a glass of wine, but my hand trembled too much to drink it. My stomach was tight with nerves, but beneath it all was a new, unfamiliar sense of control. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't the one being deceived. I was the one holding all the power. Hours passed before I finally heard the front door creak open. My body tensed as I braced myself. Derek walked in, looking exhausted, or at least pretending to be. He sighed dramatically, dropping his bag by the door before running a hand through his hair. "You wouldn't believe the day I had," he said, his voice laced with feigned exhaustion. I stared at him, gripping my wine glass, fighting the urge to throw it against the wall. Liar. "Oh?" I asked coolly. "Tough meetings?" He loosened his tie and walked toward me, completely unaware of the storm brewing in the room. "You have no idea." I exhaled sharply, then gestured toward the table. "You should sit down." Something in my tone must have caught his attention because he hesitated. His eyes flicked to the table, and then he froze. His entire body went rigid as he took in the contents of the folder. The photos, the reservations, the receipts. His betrayal laid out in black and white. For the first time in our marriage, Derek had nothing to say. I watched as he swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Vanessa, Save it!" I cut him off. My voice was eerily calm, even as my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "Don't insult me by trying to lie your way out of this. Not this time." He ran a hand over his face, his usual charming demeanor shattering into something desperate. "I can explain." I let out a bitter laugh. "Explain what, Derek? That you've been screwing your subordinate for years? That every business trip was just another excuse to sleep with her? That the life we built together was nothing but a convenient cover for your double life?" His jaw tensed, and I saw the panic flash in his eyes. He knew there was no way out. "Vanessa, please," he tried again, his voice softer now. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I snapped. "And don't even try to gaslight me, because I have every piece of evidence I need. Every lie, every meeting, every hotel. I know everything, Derek." Silence. For the first time, he was the one at a loss for words. I pushed the second folder toward him, the one with the divorce papers. "You have two choices," I said, my voice steady. "Sign these quietly and walk away, or I send this entire file to your company's HR department and Natalie's husband. Your career, your reputation, and your entire image will go up in flames. Choose. Derek's face paled. He knew what was at stake. If his affair became public, he wouldn't just lose me. He'd lose everything. I watched him battle with himself, his hands clenching at his sides. The anger, the regret, the panic. It all flickered across his face like a storm. "You're serious," he finally whispered. "More serious than you ever were about our marriage." For a long, tense moment, he just stood there, staring at the documents. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, calculating his next move, but I already knew the answer. With a shaking hand, Derek reached for the pen. He hesitated for only a second before pressing it to paper. And just like that, it was over. The man I had loved for 8 years, the man I had built a life with, had just signed away everything we were. When he looked up at me, his eyes were filled with something that almost resembled sorrow. "Vanessa, I never wanted to lose you." I met his gaze, my voice unwavering. "Then you shouldn't have betrayed me." I stood up, picked up the papers, and walked away. I didn't look back. I stood outside in the cold night air, gripping the divorce papers tightly in my hands. The weight of what had just happened inside that house pressed down on me. But instead of sadness, all I felt was relief. The finality of Derek signing those papers wasn't just the end of our marriage, it was the end of his control over me. For years, I had let myself believe in the man I married, in the life we built together. I had ignored the subtle signs, brushed aside the moments that didn't quite add up, and told myself that trust was the foundation of any strong marriage. But trust only works when both people honor it. Derek had shattered mine, and now, finally, I had taken it back. I didn't go back inside. I couldn't stomach the thought of looking at him any longer. Instead, I walked down the driveway, my breath visible in the cold air. My car was parked where I had left it, and I slid into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing grounding me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Lena. I let out a slow breath before answering. "It's done," I said, my voice steady yet hollow. There was a brief pause, and then Lena sighed. "He signed them?" "Yes." "Good," she said, but there was a sadness in her voice. "How do you feel?" I stared out at the empty road ahead. "Like I should feel worse." She was quiet for a moment before she finally said, "That's because you've already grieved him, Vanessa. You've been grieving this marriage for months. Tonight was just the final step." Her words hit me harder than I expected. She was right. I had been grieving, even before I had proof of his betrayal. Every time he came home late, every time I watched him pull away, every time he looked me in the eyes and lied to my face, I had been mourning the man I thought I knew. And now, standing at the end of it all, I didn't feel broken. I felt free. I hung up with Lena, knowing she would come over first thing in the morning to help me pack. Derek had agreed to move out within the next few days, and the thought of spending even one more night under the same roof made my stomach turn. I refused to play the role of the heartbroken wife clinging to something that no longer existed. I was done. The next morning, Derek tried one last time. I had just finished boxing up some of my things when I heard him come into the kitchen. His voice was quiet, tentative. "Vanessa, can we talk?" I didn't stop packing. "We already did." He exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "Not like this." I turned to face him, arms crossed. He looked wrecked, dark circles under his eyes, his shirt wrinkled, like he hadn't slept. "Good." "I made a mistake," he admitted, his voice raw. "I lost sight of what mattered. I got caught up in something that wasn't real." I let out a bitter laugh. "Funny. You seemed to enjoy that something for months." He swallowed, stepping closer. "I don't want to lose you." "You already did." His shoulders sagged, his desperation more obvious now. "Please, Vanessa, I can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling, a fresh start. Just don't walk away." For the first time in years, I saw him clearly, not as my husband, not as the man I once loved, but as a liar trying to keep his world from falling apart. "You don't want me back, Derek," I said, my voice calm. "You want the safety I gave you, the security of knowing I'd always be here no matter what. But that's over." His face fell. "You don't even want to try?" I shook my head. "No." He stared at me for a long moment before nodding, defeated. "I guess I deserve that." "You deserve a lot of things, Derek," I said, walking past him, grabbing my keys. "And I hope you get every single one of them." I didn't look back. That afternoon, as I drove away from the house we had shared, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just leaving him behind. I was leaving behind the version of myself that settled for less than she deserved. For the first time in a long time, I was in control of my own story. It had been 2 months since I walked away from Derek, and in that time, my life had changed in ways I never expected. At first, I thought I would feel broken, lost, alone. But the truth was, I had never felt stronger. The weight that had been pressing down on me for years was finally lifted, and I could breathe again. I threw myself into my work, took a long overdue trip with Lena, and even started going to the gym regularly. Every day, I reclaimed a little more of myself, the version of Vanessa that existed before Derek, the woman who didn't question her worth, who didn't live in the shadow of a man, who never truly valued her. But just because I moved on didn't mean Derek did. The first time he called, I ignored it. The second time, I sent it to voicemail. By the third time, he left a message. "Vanessa, please. I need to talk to you. Things have been falling apart, and I don't know what to do. Just call me back, okay? Please." I deleted the voicemail without a second thought. His desperation wasn't my problem. But then, I started hearing things. Derek's carefully constructed life, the one he fought so hard to protect, was collapsing around him. It started at work. Someone leaked the affair to his company's HR department. I knew it wasn't me. I had no interest in revenge. But I had a good guess who it was. Natalie's husband. From what I heard, he found out about the affair in the worst way possible, through a credit card charge at a hotel he never stayed at. Furious, he gathered every piece of evidence he could and sent it straight to the company's higher-ups. The fallout was instant. Derek wasn't just an employee, he was in a leadership position. Sleeping with a subordinate? That violated every company policy in the book. It didn't take long for HR to get involved, and within a week, Derek was given two options: resign quietly or be fired publicly. He resigned. But that was only the beginning of his downfall. After losing his job, Natalie, the woman he threw away our marriage for, left him too. Because, of course, she did. She had no reason to stay. Without his job, without his money, Derek was no longer a prize worth fighting for. She cut ties, found a new target, and walked away without looking back. Now, Derek was truly alone. I wasn't supposed to care. I shouldn't have cared. But a part of me, the part that spent years loving him, felt a strange, quiet sense of justice. Actions have consequences. Derek had spent months lying to me, betraying me, treating me like I was something he could replace. Now he was the one who had lost everything. One night, my phone rang again. Derek's name flashed on the screen. This time, I answered. "Vanessa," he breathed out, almost relieved. "Thank God you picked up." I leaned back against my couch, crossing my legs. "What do you want, Derek?" A pause, then a sigh. I wanted to see how you were doing." I almost laughed. Me? He wanted to check on me? "I'm doing great, actually." My voice was light, almost cheerful. "You?" He exhaled sharply. "Look, Vanessa, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. And trust me, I'm paying for it. I lost my job. Natalie's gone. I just don't know what to do anymore." For a split second, I could hear it in his voice. Regret. But regret wasn't remorse. Derek didn't miss me. He missed the security I gave him. He missed having someone to fall back on. I should have chosen you, he admitted quietly. I should have fought for our marriage instead of throwing it away. I closed my eyes, shaking my head. No, Derek. You should have respected it from the start. Silence. He sighed. Is there any chance at all that we could fix this? I didn't hesitate. No. The weight of that word hung in the air between us. Final. Irreversible. I hope you find what you're looking for, I added. And with that, I ended the call. For the first time in years, I had the last word. I stared at my phone for a long moment after ending the call, the screen dimming as Derek's name disappeared. A strange feeling settled over me. Not sadness, not anger, but clarity. That conversation had been a test, whether he realized it or not. If this had been a year ago, if I had heard that same broken tone in his voice when we were still together, I might have caved. I might have believed his regret, his I miss yous, and let my heart convince me that love alone was enough to fix everything. But love wasn't trust. Love wasn't loyalty. And love, no matter how strong, couldn't undo the past. I wasn't the same woman who had once fought for him. I wasn't the woman who would have begged for his love, swallowed my pain, and given him one more chance just so I wouldn't have to face the loneliness of walking away. No, I had already walked away. And this time, I wasn't looking back. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. It was strange how quickly the weight of the past lifted once I stopped letting it hold me down. I took a deep breath, stretching as sunlight poured into my bedroom. It wasn't the master bedroom of the house I once shared with Derek. It was my own place. A smaller apartment, simple, but filled with the things that mattered to me. The books I loved, the candles I burned late into the night, the fresh flowers I bought for myself just because I could. I had spent years making a home for a man who never truly valued it. Now I was making a home for me. That day, I made a decision. It wasn't enough to just move on from Derek. I needed to rebuild, not just my life, but my sense of self. So I booked a flight. Lena nearly screamed when I told her my plan. You're actually doing it. You're really going. I laughed, sipping my coffee. Why not? What's stopping me? For years, I had put my own dreams on hold. Traveling had always been something I wanted, but with Derek, there was always an excuse. Too much work, too many expenses, too many obligations. But now, there were no more excuses. The first stop was Paris. I wandered through the streets, eating fresh pastries, sitting by the Seine with a book in my lap. I let myself be alone without feeling lonely. Then, Italy. I stood in the middle of the Colosseum, feeling small in the best way, like the world was so much bigger than the heartbreak I had once thought would destroy me. Then Greece, where I swam in the clearest water I'd ever seen, feeling free in a way I hadn't in years. And the whole time, my phone remained silent. Derek never called again. I found out later that he tried dating again, tried finding someone to fill the space I had once occupied. But it never lasted. His reputation followed him. His mistakes, the lies, the betrayal, it all clung to him, a weight he would have to carry for the rest of his life. As for me, I didn't just move on, I moved forward. One night, months later, I stood on the balcony of a small villa overlooking the sea. The waves crashed below, the air warm, a glass of wine in my hand. I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the heartbreak, the nights spent wondering if I was enough. And then I let it all go. I had survived the worst of it. I had walked through fire and come out stronger. And the best part, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. Vanessa's journey wasn't just about discovering betrayal. It was about discovering herself. Too often, we pour our hearts into relationships that don't deserve our love, holding on to people who wouldn't hold on to us if the roles were reversed. But the truth is, no one should have to beg for love, respect, or loyalty. If someone betrays you, that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their character. This story is a reminder that walking away is not a loss, it's a victory. Vanessa chose herself. She chose peace over pain, growth over stagnation, and self-respect over staying in a relationship that didn't deserve her. And in doing so, she didn't just survive, she thrived. So ask yourself, are you holding on to something that's holding you back? Are you afraid to leave because you think you'll be lost without them? Remember this. Sometimes losing someone who never valued you is the best thing that can happen to you. What would you do if you were in Vanessa's shoes? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Scylla Reddit Stories for more powerful, real-life tales of love, betrayal, and self-discovery. See you in the next one.